Hi there, my name is Jessica. I'm the project coordinator for Harvest Gardens, and I've just put together a little slideshow here just to help explain what exactly Harvest Gardens is. Obviously, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has if you send me an email. But I just wanted to take you through some of the brief facts about it, and then give you all a little bit of a better idea of what we're talking about here. Okay, so basically, who we are, we're just people like yourself. We just want to do something world-changing. You know, you look around and you see the news and all the poverty and hunger and everything that's going on, and we just wanted to find a way to do something that was really going to affect the fabric of our culture and in our world today. So the way that we've gone about doing that is rather than just give aid to people who need it, we've decided to teach those people, particularly the very poor who are living on less than $1 a day, how to grow enough food to themselves become self-sufficient. Because, you know, I'm sure you've heard it said, it's better to teach a man to fish than to give him a fish, you know, because you'll feed him for a lifetime. But we agree, and that's what we've endeavored to do here. So basically, Harvest Gardens is a program that enables churches or groups or whatever to sponsor a community garden in Africa and basically pay for the seeds and tools and fencing and training and stuff that they need to establish a garden for them. And then that garden will become a self-sustaining food source for them that they can just go to and themselves, you know, work for themselves, get some pride in what they're doing, and then go and have enough food to feed their families. What you can see from this picture here is actually a community garden which is being established in a primary school or elementary school. And this that you're seeing here is actually one of the 40 garden beds that there would be in a community garden. So you can see from the size of it, it's about 3.5 feet by 15, 16 feet long. So it's long and narrow, so it gets accessed from both sides of the garden, so you never walk on it. Because it's been double dug, but I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. So there'd be 40 of these in a community harvest garden, and then the community would come together and work the garden, and each person who works in the garden, or who, you know, owns that garden in inverted commas, would then take responsibility for 1 or 2 of these beds, and then the produce that comes from that would support their family. So one of the main reasons, obviously, to do a harvest garden is that it alleviates hunger in a way that that I just love, because it's not just sort of a one-off. It's not just, you know, sorting their hunger out today. You're giving people a trade. You're teaching the next generation, and they have an opportunity to grow food that's so highly nutritious as well. So this picture here is some children who are gathering kale, which is one of the main foods that they grow over there, because it's so nutritionally dense. It tends to be the fact that about 50% of the plants that they grow in these gardens is kale, just because it grows so fast, it's super hardy, and it's just so incredibly healthy to eat. And so it means that people have food all the time. Another obvious thing which I touched on already is the ability for these gardens to alleviate malnutrition. And this is just a picture here of one of the poor women in Kenya who has obviously is feeding her baby. That's actually a green smoothie, which is basically just the pureed vegetables. It'd be kale, spinach, bok choy, or whatever it is that they're growing there. And it's been pureed, and now it's being fed to this baby. So it's much more nutritious than other things they may turn to if they no longer have breast milk. Like I've seen them use flour and water, and obviously that doesn't have any good nutrition. So yeah, this is the vegetables they start young there. One of the other really amazing things that I've witnessed when going to visit these gardens is the way that it really, really brings the communities together. I mean, it's just amazing. A lot of these women live very lonely lives, isolated lives. Their husbands work away. They may be widows or whatever, and they get a family in each other, and they come and they work in the garden together and sing together, and you know, they trade vegetables and stuff with each other. It's just amazing. It's really great. Obvious benefit to the gardens is obviously whatever extra produce they have, they can then sell at the market. One of the things that really touched me when I was in Africa recently was that we went to this garden and this lady was telling us how, you know, before the garden, she didn't even have money to go and buy matches to cook the dinner, and she would have to walk, I think it was 6 kilometers each way to the market on whatever day market day was. And she would buy 5 cabbages for her and her 5 kids, and that would be all they ate all week. And now they have variety, and now she can sell a little bit of her own produce, and now she can buy soap and matches and things that her family needs. And she can take care of her family, which is all she really wanted. In this picture here, this lady is actually harvesting carrots. And one of the things that I think is so amazing about this is this community learning garden is actually 4 years old, and now the community that works in it no longer needs this garden to support them individually. They all have smaller versions of this community garden in their own homes and in their own farms, but now this community actually grows produce here, sells it at market, and then uses that money to support a local orphanage. So this community has gone from being one that was in severe need and poverty, unable to feed itself, to now being able to actually support a local orphanage in another cause. So I just think it's amazing. It's wonderful. Okay, so people ask me all the time what's so special about this type of gardening, and the truth is there is actually a lot of science that goes into it. But using the different methods that we teach them in the organic training school, they can grow 6 to 10 times as much food as they had been growing in the same amount of land, which to them is like a miracle. A couple of key things: double digging, which I'll talk a little bit more about in one of the later slides. Companionship planting, which is basically just pairing the right things together. For example, if you plant beans with corn, corn is a heavy nitrogen feeder, so it takes a lot of nitrogen from the soil. And beans or other legumes, they actually fix the nitrogen in the soil, so they add nitrogen. So you can actually grow them together very successfully. And the dried husks and stuff from the corn, you can just till back into the soil or put in the compost pile and then add back in that way. And it just makes such a huge difference if you pair the right plants together. The other key thing we do is composting. We teach them about organic composting, because if we can get some of these communities away from using fertilizers and pesticides, not only is it healthier, which of course it is, but it's so much cheaper for them, because if they don't fertilize if they start fertilizing and then they stop because maybe they have a tragedy in the family and they need to use all the money for hospital bills or something, and they can't afford to fertilize their land, their crops, they won't have any crops that come through. So if we can get them back to using organic compost, it's a self-sufficient and much less expensive way of growing high yields. So there's other things in there: biointensive planting them all close together in a way that helps to shade the soil so extra moisture isn't lost, and so on. But yeah, so 6 to 10 times as much. Okay, so the impact of these gardens, just to paint a little bit of a picture for you. There was a man from Zambia who had responsibility for feeding 2,000 orphans in an orphanage there, and he was spending about $5 a week per child, which is not a large sum of money to feed someone for a whole week, but obviously times 2,000 is an awful lot of money. So he went on this organic training course, and he learned all about these different methods: double digging, companionship planting, and various other things like that. And now he grows 92% of all the food that this orphanage needs. So instead of spending $10,000 a week, it's now about $800 a week that he spends to look after the same amount of kids. Okay, so I put a little before and after picture in here. You can see the picture on the left is very, very gray. This is in Niger, which is part of the Sahara Desert in Africa. And they've actually just dug the garden in that picture. and you can see the beds are going in right now in that picture on the left, and very, very dry. And this is a community that previously wouldn't have even really bothered to grow anything because it's so very hot there. They tend to just raise animals, and then they don't have any greens at all. But the picture on the left, you can see there it's all just, you know, bright and green and coming alive, and it's such a huge difference. And this garden was actually sponsored by the Golden Valley Christian Fellowship. So one of the things we do with Harvest Gardens is we let the garden take the name of the group that has sponsored it. So now this garden is called the Golden Valley Harvest Garden, and there's a sign that lives in that garden. So everybody who walks by and everybody who works in it knows the name of its sponsor. These are just a few pictures that I've put in there just because I thought they were kind of interesting. The ones on the left, again, are Niger. Top middle is they're digging in Niger, and you can see it's very dusty there. There's not a lot that grows around. So obviously these gardens are an amazing godsend to them. Bottom middle is in Ghana, so that's the first group that did a harvest garden there. That's the community that's working the Ginsberg Harvest Garden in Ghana. On the right, on the bottom, that is our students. Now there's students there from, in that picture, 5 different nations. So we've got Niger, we've got Uganda there, we've got Ghana, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique in that picture. And they're learning about composting. You can see at the very bottom of the picture that's a compost pile that's being turned. So they're learning about organic compost and the right amounts of different materials to add to make sure that you've got a really well-balanced compost for the soil. And the picture on the far right that's kind of cut off there is a mature garden. That garden is it's probably a few years old, but the plants in there are probably about 6 to 8 months old. And you can see that they are sort of spindly looking, and the reason for that is because they're being eaten. So that's what we want. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about double digging here. This is again the group from Ghana, and you can see the 2 ladies here. They're preparing the garden beds, of which in a community harvest garden there's 40 of those. So you can see the picture of the top right there, the lady is just smoothing out the soil, but that's the end of the process. The lady at the bottom left is actually doing the digging of one of those beds there. And what they do is they dig off the first 12 inches of topsoil, and they put it to the side, and then they dig down an additional 12 inches, and they loosen the subsoil. And the reason they do that is, there's a few reasons, but basically it will loosen the soil so it'll trap moisture. When they put the topsoil back on, obviously, I can't remember if I said that, but so basically you've got 24 inches of very, very loose soil, and it holds moisture really well. The roots can go really, really deep and get strong, and what it means is you can plant the plants close together because they've got underneath them 2 feet of soil which the roots can travel around in. So it really just has such an amazing effect on growth and on the yield that they get. Okay, so again, these are just a few pictures from Niger. You can see top left, sort of before the gardens, and then all the other 3 are with the gardens flourishing. By the looks of it there, they've got kale and carrots and cowpeas and a few other things going on. This is a picture that I took of me with our first group of trainers from those first 5 nations I mentioned, and yeah, we've since sent another group to the school, but this is the first one, and I'm sure you can tell which one I am. Okay, so how many people does the garden feed? Now, the 40 beds that are in the community harvest garden it feeds about 50 people for the year. So obviously that's a very good thing. But what happens in the second year is that the neighbors in the surrounding community begins to realize that for some reason this garden is growing much more food in a small space than their own gardens and farms are. And they start to inquire as to why that is. And they go to the community and say, what is it you're doing? And they begin to emulate the same things that we're teaching them. Again, coming away from fertilizers and pesticides, going back to using composting, double digging, mulching the beds once they're dug, and so on, crop rotation. So the community will actually pass that knowledge around. And that one garden in the second year will be the thing, the catalyst, that now feeds 200 people in the second year. So how does garden sponsorship work? You or your group or community can sponsor one harvest garden for £479, again feeding about 50 people for the year. And then you do the math, it's about £9.50, something like that, to feed one person for an entire year, which is obviously a bargain. And then if you do the math for the second year, obviously, I think it's like £2 or something to feed 200 people for a year if you want to do the math for year two. But one of the things that I mentioned before, but I just want to highlight here, is that when you sponsor a community garden, that garden will take on the name of the person who sponsored it. They get to name it, so it could be John Smith's Harvest Garden, or we saw earlier the Golden Valley Harvest Garden, and that's the way that it works. So you'll get pictures periodically throughout the course of the year. Our trainers go back about 10 times through the year, but they take photos 3 or 4 times, and then those photos get sent on to you. So that's basically it, just for this quick little snapshot of what Harvest Gardens is. Obviously, if anybody has any questions, please feel more than free to get in touch. info@harvestgardens.co.uk, and then yeah, thank you for your time and listening. Look forward to hearing from you soon.